The water had been drained for 6 years, but Elena Martinez swore she could still smell the ocean. Standing in front of the massive, graffiti-covered ruins of Oceanview Aquarium, her 9-year-old son Tommy pressed against her side. She wondered if desperation had finally broken her brain. Before we dive into the story, make sure to smash subscribe, because tomorrow we have an extra special story for you that will blow your mind. The auction flyer crumpled in her pocket had promised commercial property as is, no warranties. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today. What it hadn't mentioned was that Oceanview Aquarium looked like a hurricane had fought a demolition crew and both sides lost. Shattered glass crunched under her work boots as Elena approached the main entrance. The massive acrylic panels that once showcased dolphins and whales were cracked spider webs, some missing entirely, leaving gaping wounds in the building's facade. Elena was 34 years old, a waitress at Danny's diner working double shifts 6 days a week, and she was about to spend the last $900 she had on a building everyone said should be bulldozed. Her ex-husband's voice echoed in her head, the same tone he'd used before he left. You never think things through, Elena, always chasing stupid dreams. But this wasn't a dream. This was survival. Her landlord had just sold their apartment building to developers. 60 days to vacate. With rental prices in Clearwater Beach climbing higher every month, Elena had 2 choices. Leave the town where Tommy went to school, where she had her job, where her late mother was buried, or find something, anything, she could afford. The auction notice had appeared in her mailbox the same day as the eviction letter. Some people might call that coincidence. Elena called it a sign. The bidding had taken place that morning in a stuffy county office that smelled like burnt coffee and broken promises. Elena sat in the back, her life savings in an envelope pressed against her racing heart. The auctioneer, a tired-looking woman with reading glasses on a chain, had worked through a dozen properties before reaching Lot 17, Oceanview Aquarium and Marine Park. 83, 0 square feet on 4,2 acres. Closed since 2018 due to structural damage and code violations. Property sold as is, all existing structures included. Starting bid $900. Silence filled the room. A contractor in the front row shook his head and muttered something about asbestos removal costs. Elena's hand shot up before her common sense could stop her. 900, she called out, her voice steadier than she felt. The auctioneer's eyes found hers. 900 from the lady in back. Do I hear? 1,000. More silence. Someone coughed. A phone buzzed. 900 going once. Elena held her breath. Every muscle tensed. 900 going twice. A man in an expensive suit turned to look at her, his expression unreadable. He opened his mouth as if to bid, then closed it, and shook his head. Sold to the lady for $900. And just like that, Elena Martinez became the owner of a dead aquarium. Now, 3 hours later, she stood at the entrance with Tommy, keys heavy in her palm. The building stretched before them like a beached whale. 3 stories of concrete, glass, and rust. Faded signs still advertised shark encounters and dolphin shows, their cheerful promises mocking the decay around them. "Mom," Tommy said quietly, "are you sure about this?" Elena looked down at her son. He'd grown so much in the past year, shooting up in height, while somehow also learning to fold himself smaller, quieter, after his father left. She knelt to his level. "Baby, I know it looks scary, but look." She pointed past the broken entrance to the massive space beyond. That's over 80,000 square feet. Space for storage, workshops, Maybe even small apartments we could rent out. We could live here while we fix it up. But it's so broken. Everything worth having starts out broken, Elena said, though she wasn't sure she believed it. Come on, let's see what we bought. The front doors hung crooked on their hinges. Elena pushed them open, and they entered what had once been the main visitor center. The ticket booth stood empty, its computers long since stripped away. Trash littered the floor, years of debris blown in through broken windows, but the bones of the building were still there. The ceiling soared 20 feet overhead. Support columns rose like ancient pillars, and beyond the entrance area, she could see the massive spaces where the tanks had been. Elena clicked on her flashlight and moved deeper inside. Tommy stayed close, one hand gripping the back of her jacket. The aquarium had been built in a spiral design, visitors walking a gradually descending path, past increasingly larger tanks until reaching the centerpiece, the ocean hall, a massive space with a Stowe 0-gallon tank that had once held sharks, rays, and sea turtles. They reached the ocean hall, and Elena's breath caught. Even in ruin, it was magnificent. The tank itself was drained, its acrylic walls clouded but intact. The viewing area stretched out like a small theater, tiered seating facing the enormous empty vessel. Moonlight filtered through holes in the ceiling, painting everything in silver and shadow. "It's like a cathedral," Tommy whispered, his voice carrying in the cavernous space. Elena played her flashlight across the walls, noting structural details. The concrete looked solid despite the neglect. Water damage was evident, but not catastrophic. Then her light caught something that made her pause. Near the base of the main tank, partially hidden by fallen debris, was a metal door marked "Maintenance Access, Authorized Personnel Only." "Stay here," Elena told Tommy, but he shook his head. We stick together. Remember?" She smiled despite her nervousness. "Right. Together." They approached the door. It was locked, but the mechanism was old, corroded. Elena pulled a multi-tool from her pocket, worked the blade into the gap, and after some effort, the lock gave way with a grinding click. The door swung inward, revealing a metal staircase descending into darkness. Cool air drifted up, carrying the smell of stale water and something else, something sharp and chemical. Elena's instincts screamed at her to stop, to leave, to not go down there. But she'd spent the last $900 she had. She needed to know every inch of what she'd bought. The stairs led down 20 feet, ending in a corridor lit by emergency lighting that somehow still functioned. The walls here were different from upstairs, reinforced concrete instead of decorative facades. This was the maintenance level, where the aquarium's life support systems had operated. Elena and Tommy moved cautiously forward. They passed doors marked filtration, chemical storage, and pump room. But it was the door at the end of the corridor that caught Elena's attention. Unlike the others, this one was newer, installed within the last decade. It had a keypad lock, the kind you'd find on a safe or security door. "Why would a maintenance room need a security lock?" Tommy asked. Elena had the same question. She tried the handle. Locked, of course. She examined the keypad, then noticed something odd. The door frame was slightly warped, as if the door had been forced open and then secured again. She could see where the metal had bent. Using her multi-tool, Elena worked at the damaged section. The lock was electronic, but the physical damage gave her leverage. After 10 minutes of prying and jimmying, something clicked and the door shifted. She pulled it open, her flashlight beam stabbing into the space beyond. What she saw made absolutely no sense. The room was climate-controlled. She could hear the hum of HVAC units still running. The walls were lined with industrial shelving units, the kind used for heavy storage, and on those shelves, stacked in neat rows, were metal cases. If you find this story engaging, Please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this. Hundreds of them. Elena stepped inside, Tommy right behind her. She approached the nearest shelf and lifted one of the cases. It was heavy, easily 30 pounds. She set it down and opened the latches. Inside, nestled in foam padding, were gold bars, not costume jewelry or brass. Real gold bars, each one stamped with purity marks and serial numbers. "Mom," Tommy breathed. "Is that real?" Elena's hands trembled as she picked up one of the bars. The weight felt right, the color unmistakable in her flashlight beam. She set it down and moved to another case. More gold. She opened a third case. Not gold this time, but bundles of currency, $100 bills wrapped and sealed. Her mind struggled to process what she was seeing. This wasn't just hidden treasure. This was a vault, professionally organized, deliberately concealed beneath an abandoned aquarium. She did quick mental math, though the numbers seemed impossible. If each case held, even 10 bars, and there were hundreds of cases, plus the currency. A sound echoed through the maintenance level, metal scraping against concrete. Elena froze, Tommy pressing against her side. The sound came again, closer now. Footsteps on the stairs. Someone else was here. Elena killed her flashlight and pulled Tommy behind a shelving unit. Her heart hammered so loud, she was sure whoever was coming could hear it. The footsteps entered the corridor, moving with purpose. Not the hesitant steps of an urban explorer, but someone who knew exactly where they were going. A bright light swept across the doorway. "I know you're in there," a man's voice called out. Not threatening, but not friendly either. "The security system sent an alert when you opened that door. Been waiting 6 years for someone stupid enough to buy this place." Elena's mind raced. Security system still active meant someone had been maintaining it, paying for it. She stood slowly, keeping Tommy behind her. "We don't want trouble. I just bought this building legally." A man stepped into the doorway. He was maybe 60, gray hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing jeans and a flannel shirt that had seen better days, but his eyes were sharp, calculating. "Name's Vincent," he said. "I was the aquarium's senior engineer before it closed. And yeah, you bought the building legally. But what's in this room? That's a different story. What is all this?" Elena asked. Vincent studied her for a long moment, then sighed. "A mess that's about to become your problem. You mind if I turn on the lights? This conversation's gonna take a while." He flipped a switch, and fluorescent bulbs flickered to life, revealing the full scope of the vault. Elena's estimate had been conservative. There were at least 500 cases, maybe more. "Before I explain," Vincent said, "I need to know something. You bought this place because you were desperate, right? Needed space, needed a chance?" Elena nodded warily. "Good. Means you're not one of them." "One of who?" "The people who've been waiting for someone to buy this property so they could claim what's inside." Vincent leaned against the doorframe, looking suddenly tired. "The aquarium closed in 2018, right after Hurricane Diana. Major structural damage. Insurance wouldn't cover it. Owner went bankrupt. That's the official story. The truth is more complicated." He gestured at the vault. "This was built in 2015 by our owner, Marcus Webb. He didn't tell anyone why, just said it was emergency storage. But then he started having private meetings down here. Men in expensive suits who didn't look like they gave a damn about fish." Tommy gripped Elena's hand tighter. Vincent continued. "I got curious, started paying attention. Turned out Marcus had gotten involved with some very bad people. Money laundering, stolen goods. I don't know the full extent, but he was using the aquarium as a front, and this vault as their storage facility." "Then why didn't the police find it?" Elena asked. "Because Marcus made sure they never looked. When Hurricane Diana hit, he used it as an excuse to close. Laid everyone off, walked away. I think he was planning to come back for this once things cooled down. What happened to him? Vincent's face darkened. Car accident in 2019. Single vehicle. Drove off a cliff. Police called it suicide. But I don't buy it. I think his partners decided he was a liability. Elena looked at the shelves of gold and currency, her mind spinning. So this belongs to criminals? Technically, it belongs to whoever Marcus stole it from. But good luck figuring that out. This stuff has been sitting here for 6 years, and his partners have been waiting for their chance to retrieve it. And now I own the building, Elena said slowly. Which means they're going to come for me. Vincent nodded grimly. They would have bought it themselves years ago, but there was a legal tangle. County liens, bankruptcy court, EPA requirements for the cleanup. Took until now to clear. They probably figured they'd just intimidate whoever bought it and take what's theirs. But it's not theirs, Tommy said suddenly, his voice small but firm. It's in Mum's building. That makes it hers. Vincent smiled sadly. Kid's got a point. Legally, anything in a building you purchase, as is, belongs to you. But law and reality are different things. Elena's mind raced through options, all of them bad. She could call the police, but with what proof? A vault full of gold that might be stolen. They'd seize everything while they investigated, and she'd get nothing. She could try to sell the gold quietly. But where? How? She was a waitress from Clearwater Beach, not a criminal mastermind. Or she could walk away, abandon her $900 purchase, and tell no one. But that meant staying in crisis, meant Tommy losing his school, meant giving up. How much time do I have? She asked. Vincent checked his watch. They'll know someone bought the property by tomorrow morning. Give them a day to research you, decide on an approach. Maybe 2 days before they make contact. Then I need to work fast, Elena said, surprising herself with the steel in her voice. Can I trust you? Vincent studied her. I stayed here for 6 years, living in the old staff quarters upstairs, watching over this mess, because I felt responsible. Marcus was my boss, my friend. I didn't know what he was into until it was too late. So yeah, you can trust me. Good, Elena said. Because I'm going to need help. Over the next 36 hours, Elena worked with an intensity that surprised even her. She'd spent years waiting tables, organizing chaos, managing difficult customers, solving problems on the fly. Now she channeled all of that into understanding what she'd inherited. Vincent helped her inventory the vault. 487 cases total. 420 contained gold bars, approximately 50 pounds each. The math was staggering. At current prices, the gold alone was worth over $200 million. The remaining 60 cases held currency in various denominations, plus some cases containing jewelry, rare coins, and documents that looked like they might be bonds or property deeds. Vincent estimated the total value at $287 million, possibly more. It was more money than Elena had imagined existed in the real world, and it was sitting beneath a building she'd bought for $900. But she couldn't just take it, she understood that much. This money had been stolen, laundered, hidden. People had probably been hurt in the accumulation of this fortune. Using it directly would make her complicit, would destroy any moral ground she stood on. She needed a different approach. What if? She said to Vincent on the second night, sitting in the old staff break room with coffee and a notebook full of calculations. What if we didn't try to keep it? What do you mean? I mean, what if we made it public? Blow the whole thing open before the cruise. Bad guys can stop us. Let the authorities sort out where it came from and where it should go. Vincent frowned. You'd get nothing. After investigations and legal fees, you'd be lucky to get a finder's fee. I'd get something more important, Elena countered. I'd get them off my back. Hard to threaten someone who's already told the world everything. Tommy, who'd been dozing in the corner, sat up, like ripping off a Band-Aid fast. Elena smiled at her son. Exactly like that, baby. Vincent stroked his beard thoughtfully. It could work. But you need leverage, protection. These people don't play nice just because you went public. Then we make sure going public means going big, Elena said. Not just police. Media, social networks, federal authorities, all at once. Make it too hot for them to touch. Over the next 12 hours, they prepared. Elena documented everything with her phone, photographing the vault, the cases, serial numbers on gold bars, documents. She wrote a detailed statement explaining how she'd found it, with Vincent as a witness. Vincent compiled everything he knew about Marcus's criminal associations, names, dates, meetings he'd witnessed. It wasn't enough to convict anyone, but it was enough to point investigators in the right direction. Elena created a Facebook Live event and sent invitations to local news stations, the FBI's Tampa field office, and half a dozen investigative journalists she found online. The message was simple. Major discovery of stolen assets at Clearwater Beach property, live revealed tomorrow at noon. The responses came quickly. Journalists smelling a story, law enforcement demanding she contact them immediately, and one message that made her blood run cold. It came through Facebook Messenger, from an account with no profile picture. Very stupid, Elena. You have one chance to make this right. We'll be in touch. She showed it to Vincent. He nodded grimly. They know. The clock's ticking now. Good, Elena said though. Her hands shook as she typed. Let them come. The next morning, Elena stood in the ocean hall, surrounded by more people than she'd ever seen in one place focused on her. News crews had set up cameras. FBI agents in windbreakers examined the vault with obvious shock. Police officers kept back a growing crowd of onlookers who'd heard something big was happening at the old aquarium. Elena wore her waitress uniform, hadn't had time to change. Tommy stood beside her holding her hand, and Vincent was on her other side. She felt like she might throw up, but she'd made her choice. A reporter from Channel Oceanview shoved a microphone toward her. Miss Martinez, can you explain how you discovered this vault? Elena took a deep breath and told the story. From the auction to the locked door, to the impossible discovery. She didn't embellish, didn't dramatize. She just spoke the truth as cameras rolled, and people listened. I bought this building for $900 because I needed space for my family, she concluded. I found something that wasn't mine, that probably represents suffering and crime I can't even imagine. So I'm giving it to the authorities to sort out and to return to whoever it was stolen from. But you could have kept it, another reporter pressed. Legally, it was in your building. Legally and ethically are different things, Elena replied. My son is watching. What kind of example would I set by profiting from someone else's pain? The press conference continued for another hour. FBI Special Agent Catherine Reeves took over, explaining that a full investigation would be launched. The gold would be catalogued, serial numbers traced, attempts made to identify the original victims of whatever crimes had accumulated this fortune. Through it all, Elena watched the crowd. She was looking for them. The men who'd sent that message, the criminals who'd been waiting 6 years to reclaim their stash. But if they were there, they stayed hidden. That night, back in their cramped apartment for what might be the last time, Elena sat with Tommy. The news played on their TV, her own face staring back at her. Single mother's stunning discovery. Read the headline. I'm scared, Mum, Tommy admitted. Me too, baby. She pulled him close. But sometimes, Doing the right thing is scary. That doesn't mean we don't do it. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered, Elena Martinez? The voice was male. Smooth. Educated. Yes. You made quite a show today. Very noble. Very brave. Silence stretched between them. I'm guessing you're one of the people who wanted what was in that vault, Elena said, keeping her voice steady. Wanted? Past tense. You've made that impossible now. Congratulations. So this is the threatening phone call part? The man laughed, genuinely amused. No threats necessary. You've actually done us a favor. That gold was becoming a liability, too hot to move. Now, it's the government's problem. We write it off and move on. Then why are you calling? Professional courtesy. You outmaneuvered us, and I wanted you to know we respect that. Also a warning, not a threat, just practical advice. You're about to become famous for finding that vault. A lot of people are going to come out of the woodwork, claiming it's theirs, deserved or not. Be careful who you trust. The line went dead. Elena sat staring at her phone, trying to process what had just happened. Had the criminal just let her go? Tommy looked up at her. Was that the bad guys? I think so. Are they coming for us? Elena thought about the call, the tone, the man's words. No, baby. I don't think they are. She was right. Over the following weeks, no threats materialized. No mysterious accidents or intimidation attempts. The criminals, whoever they were, had apparently decided Elena wasn't worth the attention. But the man had been right about one thing. Everyone else came out of the woodwork. The investigation into the vault's contents revealed a staggering web of crimes spanning 2 decades. Some of the gold bars were traced to a bullion dealer robbery in 2009. Currency came from various bank frauds. The jewelry included pieces taken in high-end home invasions across 3 states. The documents Vincent had found helped authorities unravel Marcus Webb's criminal network. Arrests were made, not of the top-level players, they'd probably never find those, but of mid-level operators who'd used the aquarium as a drop point. Victims, or their families, began filing claims for recovery. A widow in Oregon, whose husband's coin collection had been stolen in 2011. Business owners who'd been defrauded. Insurance companies that had paid out claims on the stolen goods. Elena watched it all unfold on the news. Still surreal to see her name attached to a story this big. But she was more concerned with practical matters. The FBI had sealed the building while they processed the vault, meaning she couldn't even begin repairs on her $900 investment. Then, 3 months after the discovery, Special Agent Reeves called her in for a meeting. Elena sat across a desk from the agent, nervous about what was coming. Miss Martinez, Reeves began, I wanted to give you an update on the recovery process. We've identified original owners for approximately 60% of the vault's contents. That property will be returned, minus legal fees and our costs. And the rest? The remaining 40%, roughly $115 million, has no identifiable owner. The statute of limitations on many of the potential crimes has expired. Some of the gold's serial numbers lead to dead ends, possibly foreign origin. Elena's heart sank. So it goes back to the criminals? No, Reeves smiled. It goes to you. Elena blinked. What? Federal law is clear. When stolen property cannot be returned to its rightful owner after a good faith effort, and when the person who found it did so legally and reported it, immediately they're entitled to a finder's fee. In cases where no owner can be determined, that fee can be the full value. But I didn't find it to get a reward. I found it because I owned the building, which makes it even more clear-cut, legally. Miss Martinez, assuming no new claims arise in the next 6 months, You're looking at receiving somewhere between $90 and $115 million after taxes. Elena couldn't speak. Tommy, who'd come with her, grabbed her hand. Mum? Is she saying we're rich? Reeves laughed. Yes, young man. Your mother is about to become very wealthy. The agent leaned forward, her expression growing serious. But let me give you some advice. This kind of money changes people, changes relationships. You're going to have friends you never knew you had, business opportunities that sound too good to be true, and pressure from every direction. Get a good lawyer, a good financial advisor, and be very careful who you trust. Elena nodded slowly, still trying to process. And the aquarium? Can I keep working on it? The building's yours. We'll be done processing the scene in another month. After that, do whatever you want with it. Driving home, Tommy practically bounced in his seat. Mum, we're rich. We can get a new apartment, a new car. You don't have to work at the diner anymore. Elena pulled over, needing to have this conversation before his imagination ran wild. Tommy, listen to me. This money, it's not going to change who we are, okay? We're still us. We're still going to be careful. Still going to think about what we really need. But we can fix the aquarium, right? Make it real again? Elena thought about the massive building, the potential it represented. Maybe, but not like it was. Something different, something better. Over the next year, as legal processes churned, and the money slowly materialized in accounts Elena was still learning to understand, she made careful plans. She hired Vincent as her project manager, paying him a real salary for the first time in years. Together they transformed Oceanview from a traditional aquarium into something entirely new, a marine rescue and rehabilitation center, focused on helping injured sea turtles, dolphins, and other creatures found along Florida's coast. But that was only half of it. The second half was about the community. Elena established the Second Chance Foundation, funded by her finder's fee. It provided emergency housing assistance, job training, and small business loans to people in Clearwater Beach who were struggling the way she'd struggled. When reporters asked why she was giving so much away, her answer was simple. I got a second chance when I needed it most. I'm just passing it along. The aquarium's reopening 2 years after Elena's purchase was a community celebration. Thousands attended to see the new facility, to meet the rescued animals, and to hear Elena speak. She stood in the ocean hall, now beautifully restored with a massive tank where injured sea creatures recovered before being released back to the ocean. 3 years ago, she told the crowd, I stood here with my son, in a broken building I bought for $900. I was terrified, desperate, and out of options. I came looking for space, and found something I never expected. She paused, looking at the faces before her. Some she recognized from the diner, from Tommy's school, from around town. Others were strangers drawn by the story. I found treasure, yes, but not the gold kind. I found the treasure of community, of people like Vincent, who stayed loyal to a place everyone else abandoned. I found the treasure of second chances, of redemption, of turning something broken into something beautiful. Tommy, now 12, and helping with the Sea Turtle Care program, waved from the crowd. Elena smiled at him. Most of all, I found the treasure of teaching my son that doing the right thing, even when it's hard, even when it's scary, is always worth it. The crowd applauded, but Elena wasn't finished. People ask me all the time if I regret not keeping quiet about what I found. If I wish I'd tried to hide the gold, keep it all. And I can honestly say no. Because this? She gestured around the hall, at the rescued creatures, at the community gathered. This is worth more than any amount of gold. She paused. Well, almost any amount. The crowd laughed. But seriously, what we've built here, what we're building together, That's real wealth. And unlike gold, it can't be stolen, or hidden, or lost. It grows every time we help someone, every time we save an animal, every time we choose hope over fear. The center thrived. Within a year, they were treating over 200 marine animals annually, releasing most back to the wild, healthy, and strong. The Second Chance Foundation helped 300 families avoid eviction, funded 47 new small businesses, and provided job training to hundreds more. Elena still worked, though she'd long since left the diner. Now her work was managing the center, expanding programs, and trying to give back a fraction of what she'd received. But she never forgot where she came from. Once a month, she returned to Danny's diner, not as an employee but as a customer. She'd sit at the counter, order coffee and pie, and leave a $1,000 tip for whoever was working. For the next person who needs a second chance, she'd say. Tommy grew up surrounded by marine biology and philanthropy. He learned to care for injured sea turtles before he learned algebra, and he never took for granted how close they'd come to losing everything. When he was 15, a reporter asked what it was like having a mother who'd found a hidden fortune. "The fortune's not what makes her special," Tommy replied with the easy wisdom of someone who'd learned early what mattered. "She was already special when we only had $900. The gold just gave her tools to help more people." Vincent, now in his mid-60s, finally retired comfortably. Elena had insisted on setting up a pension fund for him that would keep him secure for the rest of his life. He spent his retirement volunteering at the center, teaching young engineers about marine systems. "I spent 6 years guarding gold," he'd tell them. "But I've spent these last years guarding something better. Hope. Much better investment." The criminals who'd hidden the fortune never resurfaced. Occasionally Elena wondered about them, about whether they'd learned something from her choice, or just moved on to the next scheme. She hoped they'd learned, but she didn't count on it. What mattered was that their stolen goods had been transformed into something pure, something that helped rather than hurt. 5 years after buying the aquarium, Elena stood once again in the ocean hall, this time watching Tommy lead a tour for visiting school children. He was 17 now, planning to study marine biology in college, passionate about conservation in a way that made her heart swell with pride. A woman approached Elena, middle-aged with kind eyes. "Miss Martinez, I wanted to thank you. Call me Elena. And thank me for what? 3 years ago, my husband died. I had 2 kids, no savings, about to lose our home. Your foundation gave us bridge assistance, helped me get training as a medical coder. I just bought a house, our own place. Because of you, because of what you built here." Elena felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm so glad. That's exactly what it's for." "But that's not why I wanted to thank you," the woman continued. "It's the way you did it. No judgment, no hoops to jump through. You treated us like we deserved help, not like we'd failed. That dignity, that respect, it saved more than our finances. It saved our souls." After the woman left, Elena walked through the center, taking in everything they'd built. The rehabilitation pools, where injured sea turtles learned to swim again. The classroom where kids learned about ocean conservation. The community meeting room, where job training sessions happened every week. All of it built on a foundation of $900 and the courage to open one locked door. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her heart skipped, remembering that call years ago from the criminal who'd let her go. But when she answered, it was Special Agent Reeves. "Elena, just wanted to give you a heads up. We traced another 50,000 in gold bars to a robbery victim in Maine. We'll be returning those, which means your final total drops slightly." "That's fine," Elena said. "I'm glad they'll get their property back." "You know," Reeves said thoughtfully, "I've been doing this job for 20 years. I've seen a lot of people find money, legally and illegally. You're the first one who seemed genuinely more concerned with doing right than getting rich. Maybe that's why I got to keep some of it, Elena suggested. Maybe that's exactly why. That evening, Elena and Tommy sat on the dock behind the aquarium, watching the sun set over the Gulf of Mexico. A pelican flew past, probably one of the dozens that had been treated and released over the years. "Mom," Tommy said, "do you ever think about what would have happened if someone else had bought the aquarium?" Elena considered. "Sometimes, but I don't think it works that way. I think I was supposed to find it. Or it was supposed to find me. We were at the right place in each other's stories." "That's kind of mystical for you." Elena laughed. "Maybe I'm getting soft in my old age." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the water turn gold in the fading light. Tommy spoke again. "Did you ever find out what happened to the gold's original owners? Like, where did the criminals steal it from in the first place?" "Some of it, yes. Others, we'll never know. But I think about them sometimes, the people who lost things in the crimes that filled that vault. I hope they've found peace, wherever they. And the criminals? Do you think they found peace?" Elena thought about that mysterious phone call, the man who'd called to congratulate her on outmaneuvering them. "I think they found what they were looking for, just not in the way they expected." More silence. Then Tommy asked the question that surprised her. "If you could go back, knowing everything that would happen, would you still bid on the aquarium?" Elena didn't hesitate. "Every single time. Because yes, I found gold. But more importantly, I found purpose. I found that I could do hard things, scary things, right things. And I found that sometimes the treasure you're looking for isn't what you find, and what you find is exactly the treasure you needed." The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Somewhere in the center behind them, a rescued dolphin clicked and whistled, happy in its temporary home before being released back to the wild. Elena stood, brushing sand from her jeans. "Come on, let's go check on the new sea turtle. Dr. Reynolds said she was doing better today." "That's the one found near the pier with the damaged flipper." "Yeah. We're hoping she'll recover enough for release." They walked back toward the center, mother and son, their shadows long in the dying light. The aquarium rose before them, no longer abandoned, but alive with purpose, filled with life that was being saved, nurtured, and sent back into the world. Behind them, the Gulf whispered its eternal song. Beneath their feet, the floor where she'd found 280 shade $1 million in hidden fortune, now held only the memory of that discovery, transformed into foundation for something far more valuable. Because Elena Martinez had learned a truth that no amount of gold could teach. The real treasure isn't what you find in locked vaults or hidden rooms. It's what you build with your choices, who you become in the process, and the lives you touch along the way. She'd bought a wreck for $900 and found a fortune. But the fortune wasn't the gold. It was the chance to prove that one person, one choice, one moment of courage could change everything. And in a broken-down aquarium in Clearwater Beach, where water no longer flowed but hope did, that treasure multiplied every single day. The beginning. The television crews had finally left, but the consequences of Elena's discovery were only beginning to ripple outward in ways she couldn't have anticipated. 7 months after the press conference, she received a visitor who would change everything she thought she understood about the vault beneath Oceanview. The woman who appeared at the Rehabilitation Center's administration office wore an expensive navy suit and carried a leather briefcase that probably cost more than Elena's first car. Her credentials identified her as Margaret Chen, senior investigator for the International Cultural Heritage Protection Agency, a name Elena had never heard before. "Miss Martinez, I need to speak with you about items recovered from your property," Margaret said, her tone professional but urgent. Specifically, case number 447 through 451. Elena pulled up the FBI's inventory database on her computer, scrolling to those numbers. Her breath caught. The artifact cases. I remember those. They were separate from the gold, behind glass. Yes. What you found wasn't just stolen currency and precious metals. You found something that's been missing for 43 years. Margaret opened her briefcase and withdrew a photograph. It showed a museum display with ancient pottery, ceremonial masks, and intricately carved jade pieces. This is the Esperanza collection, looted from archaeological sites in Guatemala between 1978 and 1981 during the Civil War. Priceless artifacts representing 3,000 years of Mayan civilization. They disappeared into the black market and were believed destroyed. Elena stared at the photo, then back at Margaret. And they were sitting in that vault the whole time. All 67 pieces. Intact. Perfectly preserved. Thanks to the climate control system someone maintained. Miss Martinez, you didn't just recover stolen money. You recovered a nation's heritage. Margaret leaned forward. The Guatemalan government has formally requested the return of these artifacts. But they wanted me to meet with you first, to thank you personally, and to invite you to the repatriation ceremony. Elena's mind spun. She'd been so focused on the gold, the currency, the more obvious treasure that she'd barely registered the artifact cases. I don't need thanks. I just did what was right. That's exactly why they want to honor you. In Guatemala, there's a saying, El que devuelve lo robado, restaura más que objetos. The one who returns what was stolen, restores more than objects. You've given back more than artifacts. You've returned dignity, history, cultural identity. 3 weeks later, Elena and Tommy stood in the National Palace of Enten's Culture in Guatemala City, surrounded by dignitaries, archaeologists, and members of indigenous communities who'd traveled from remote mountain villages. The Esperanza collection was displayed in a special exhibition, each piece labeled with details about its origin and significance. An elderly man approached Elena. His face was weathered like ancient bark, his traditional woven clothing marking him as a Maya elder. Through a translator, he spoke. My grandfather's grandfather helped excavate one of the sites these came from, before the soldiers came, before the stealing began. We thought we would never see these ancestors again. He touched one of the ceremonial masks, with trembling fingers. This was used in planting ceremonies. It carries the prayers of farmers for 400 harvests. Because of you, it will carry prayers again. Elena felt tears burning her eyes. I just found them. I didn't do anything special. The translator spoke to the elder, who smiled, and replied. The translator turned back to Elena. He says, you did the hardest thing. You chose to let go. Most people who find treasure, they grab tight. You opened your hands and let the treasure find its true home. The ceremony was covered by international media, adding another layer to Elena's unwanted fame. But this time, the attention brought something unexpected. Dr. James Whitmore, a marine archaeologist from Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, contacted her about a different kind of treasure hunt. Miss Martinez, your aquarium sits on a historically significant stretch of coastline, he explained during a video call. Between 1622 and 1715, at least 8 Spanish galleons sank in storms within 10 miles of your location. We've been trying to get funding to explore the area for years, but it's expensive and complicated. Elena wasn't sure where this was going. What does that have to do with me? Your foundation could sponsor the expedition. But more than that, your facility could become the base of operations. We'd employ local workers, train students, turn the center into a hub for marine archaeology. Anything we find would be properly documented, preserved, and displayed. No treasure hunting, real science. Elena thought about it. The center was doing well, but adding an archaeological component could expand their educational mission. What would you need from us? Lab space, storage for equipment, dock access for our research vessel. And honestly, your story, your credibility. After what you did with the vault, academic institutions trust you. That trust opens doors that money can't. The partnership launched 6 months later. Dr. Whitmore's team discovered the wreck site of the San Miguel, a 1754 galleon that had been carrying not treasure, but supplies for a failing colony. The cargo holds contained preserved tools, ceramics, personal belongings, and most significantly, a sealed chest of letters written by colonists to families they'd never see again. Tommy, now working toward a degree in marine biology while helping at the center, assisted in the careful preservation of the letters. "Mum, listen to this one," he said one evening, translating the Spanish with the help of a historian. "My dearest Rosa, if you receive this letter, know that I died thinking of the orange trees in our courtyard and the sound of your laugh. Tell our daughter I loved her, even though I never met her. Tell her I tried to build a future for her in this new world." Elena listened to the words of a man dead for 370 years, a man who'd left everything hoping to provide for his family, just as she'd gambled $900 on a ruined building for the same reason. The connection across centuries made her chest ache. The San Miguel discovery brought renewed attention to Oceanview. Schools organized field trips to see the artifacts. The center added a maritime history wing. But it also brought someone Elena had been half expecting, half dreading for years. Marcus Webb's daughter appeared without warning one Tuesday morning. She was maybe 40, with her father's sharp features softened by what looked like years of hard living. She introduced herself as Caroline Webb, and her first words were, "I'm not here for money." Elena invited her into her office, wary but curious. Caroline sat stiffly, hands clasped in her lap. "I saw the news about the Guatemalan artifacts. It made me think about my father, about all the things I didn't know he was involved in. You didn't know about the vault. I didn't know about any of it. He told us he was making good investments, that the aquarium was his legitimate retirement plan. When he died, I thought it was grief over losing the business. Now I understand he was probably murdered." Caroline's voice cracked slightly. "I spent years angry at him for leaving us in debt. Now I'm angrier that he put us in danger without us knowing." Elena studied the woman across from her. She saw genuine pain, not calculation. "Why are you here, Caroline?" "Because you did something I've been trying to figure out how to do for 20 years. You took something broken and poisoned and turned it into something that helps people. I need to know how, because my father left me more than debt. He left me his reputation, his name, and I want to turn that into something different too." They talked for 3 hours. Caroline had been working as a paralegal, struggling with the stigma of her father's crimes. Elena offered her a position with the Second Chance Foundation, helping people navigate legal complexities when applying for assistance. It was a way to use the painful education she'd received dealing with her father's criminal legacy to help others. "People will say, I'm crazy for hiring you," Elena said. "They'll say you can't be trusted." Caroline nodded. "They said the same thing about you when you announced the vault discovery, that you'd probably been in on it, that you'd hidden money somewhere. People always look for the worst first. Then we'll show them something better," Elena replied. Together, the partnership worked. Caroline's understanding of legal systems and her dogged determination to prove herself made her invaluable. Within a year, the foundation's efficiency improved dramatically. More families were helped, faster, and with better outcomes. But the most profound change came from an unexpected source. One of the families Caroline helped was headed by a woman named Patricia Morgan, whose son had special needs, requiring expensive therapy. The foundation covered 6 months of treatment, enough for Patricia to get stable employment with benefits. 2 years later, Patricia's son, Daniel, was thriving. He started a program teaching other children with autism about marine life, using the rehabilitation center's rescued sea creatures as therapy animals. The program's success caught national attention, bringing grants and expansion opportunities. "This is what I mean about treasure," Elena told a documentary crew filming a piece about Oceanview's transformation. "I found gold, yes, but look at what that gold became." Patricia got help, which let Daniel thrive, which created a program that's now helping dozens of kids. That's compound interest. You can't calculate with numbers. The documentary, The Fortune Beneath, aired on Netflix and sparked another wave of interest. But it also brought complications. Treasure hunters descended on Clearwater Beach, convinced there must be more vaults, more hidden riches. They trespassed on properties, dug holes in public beaches, and generally made nuisances of themselves. Elena found herself becoming an unintentional spokesperson for responsible discovery. She gave interviews explaining that real treasure wasn't about getting rich quick, but about building slowly, investing in community, creating something sustainable. "People ask me all the time if I've looked for more hidden rooms at the aquarium," she told a reporter. "And the answer is yes. We've thoroughly surveyed the property. Not because we expect to find anything, but because we needed to know the building's structure for safety. We found old pipes, electrical systems, storage areas, nothing remotely like that vault. Because that vault was an aberration, not the norm." But she understood the hunger that drove the treasure hunters. She'd felt it herself, that intoxicating possibility that your life could change in an instant. The difference was that she'd found her treasure, and it had taught her that instant change was actually the hardest kind, that real transformation took time, patience, and work. The center's 10th anniversary celebration brought together everyone who'd been part of the journey. Vincent, now 72, gave a speech about guarding gold versus guarding hope. Caroline talked about redemption and second chances. Tommy, finishing his graduate degree, presented research on rehabilitation, techniques they'd developed at Oceanview. But the moment that brought Elena to tears came when Dr. Whitmore announced a new discovery. The San Miguel site had yielded something extraordinary in a sealed, waterproof chest that had somehow survived 3 centuries underwater. Inside were navigation charts, logbooks, and a detailed accounting of every person aboard the ship when it sank. "We now know the names of all 147 souls lost," Dr. Whitmore said. "Sailors, soldiers, colonists, servants, people history forgot. Thanks to this center, thanks to Elena's decision to do archaeology the right way, these names will be remembered. Monuments will be erected. Descendants who never knew this part of their family story will understand their heritage. 147 names rescued from oblivion, not with gold, but with care, patience, and respect for the past." An elderly woman approached Elena after the announcement. She had flown in from Spain, she explained, after learning that her ancestor, a sailor named Tomás Rodriguez, had been on the San Miguel. "My family always said there was a Tomás who went to sea and never returned, but we didn't know details. Now I know he was 19 years old, he played the guitar, and he died in a storm trying to build a future." The woman pressed a worn photograph into Elena's hand. "This is my daughter, my granddaughter, and my great-grandson. 4 generations that exist because Tomás had a brother who stayed in Spain. We owe our existence to that choice, and we owe the knowledge of Tomas to yours. Thank you for caring about the dead as much as the living." That night, Elena walked through the center after everyone had gone home. She passed the rehabilitation pools, where 3 sea turtles recovered from injuries. The maritime archaeology lab, where students carefully cleaned artifacts from the San Miguel. The classroom where Daniel's program would meet tomorrow. The community room where Caroline would help a family navigate housing assistance paperwork. All of it built on the foundation of one locked door, one impossible discovery, one choice to do right instead of easy. Her phone buzzed. A text from Tommy. "Mom, Dr. Whitmore wants to talk to you tomorrow. They found something else at the San Miguel site. Something big. He won't say what until he sees you in person." Elena smiled. There was always something else, some new discovery, some new challenge. That was life. A series of locked doors and choices about whether to open them. She thought about the criminal who'd called her years ago, the man who'd said she'd outmaneuvered them. She wondered if he understood yet that she hadn't been maneuvering at all. She'd simply been herself. A woman who needed space and found purpose. Who discovered treasure and recognized it wasn't hers to keep. Who accepted good fortune and immediately looked for ways to share it. The real outmaneuvering had been of herself, of her own fear and scarcity mindset, of the voice that said, "Hold tight, grab what you can, don't let go." She'd let go of $287 million, and in return, she'd received something far more valuable, a life of meaning, a community transformed, a son growing up, understanding that wealth wasn't what you kept, but what you gave away. The treasure hadn't been in the vault, it had been in every choice that came after, every person helped, every life touched, every moment of choosing the hard right over the easy wrong. And that treasure, unlike gold, would never tarnish, never be stolen, never lose its value. It would only grow, compound, multiply, with each passing year, each new person inspired to open their own locked doors and see what fortune awaited on the other side. Not the fortune of money, but the fortune of becoming someone worthy of the treasure they found. Elena turned off the lights and headed home, ready for whatever tomorrow's discovery would bring, knowing that the greatest discovery of all had been the person she'd become in the process of giving everything away. The real treasure was never about finding fortune. It was about fortune finding you ready, worthy, and brave enough to let it transform you into something greater than you'd ever imagined possible. And in that transformation lay the truest wealth of all. The discovery Dr. Whitmore wanted to discuss turned out to be something that would redefine everything they thought they knew about the San Miguel and the waters around Clearwater Beach. Elena met him at the dock the next morning, where his research vessel was moored alongside their facility. "We found a second ship, Doctor," Whitmore said without preamble, his excitement barely contained. "Less than half a mile from the San Miguel site. But this one, Elena, this one changes everything we understand about colonial-era maritime routes." He led her aboard the vessel, down into the research lab, where monitors displayed sonar images and treed reconstructions. "This is the Santa Mariana, a Portuguese merchant ship that disappeared in 1989. Historical records said it sank off the coast of Brazil. 35 years of maritime archaeology, and we've been looking in the wrong ocean." Elena studied the images. Even she could tell this wreck was different, larger, more intact than the San Miguel. What was it carrying? That's what's extraordinary. According to the manifest we recovered, this wasn't a treasure ship in the traditional sense. It was carrying seeds, agricultural tools, breeding livestock, and something else. He pulled up another image. Medical supplies and texts, advanced for the time. This was a ship meant to establish a permanent, self-sustaining colony. a colony that never happened because the ship never arrived. So what does this mean for us? Elena asked. It means your center just became ground zero for one of the most significant archaeological finds in decades. But more than that, I think we can use this to create something unprecedented. Dr. Whitmore's eyes gleamed with possibility. A living history program. We use the agricultural information from the Santa Mariana to recreate period gardens. We study the medical texts to understand colonial-era healing practices. We don't just preserve history, we bring it back to life. The project consumed the next 2 years. Tommy took the lead on the botanical aspects, working with historians to identify and source heritage seed varieties mentioned in the Santa Mariana's cargo lists. They created a colonial garden behind the center, growing vegetables and medicinal plants exactly as the colonists would have. But it was the medical texts that brought the most unexpected revolution. Dr. Sarah Kincaid, a researcher specializing in ethnobotany, discovered that many of the healing practices described in the Santa Mariana's medical chest had been learned from indigenous peoples in Portugal's colonies, knowledge that had been lost or dismissed as superstition. "Look at this," she told Elena, pointing to a carefully translated passage. "They're describing a treatment for infected wounds using a specific combination of plants. We tested it in the lab. It has genuine antimicrobial properties. This isn't folklore, it's sophisticated medicine that we forgot about." The discovery led to a partnership with medical schools studying antibiotic resistance. The colonial-era knowledge, preserved by accident at the bottom of the ocean, might hold keys to modern medical challenges. Papers were published, grants awarded, and suddenly Oceanview wasn't just a rescue center, but a research institution attracting scientists from around the world. Elena watched it all with a mixture of pride and disbelief. She'd bought a building to store cleaning supplies. Now doctoral students conducted experiments in labs where dolphins once performed tricks, while visiting scholars examined 300-year-old medical texts in climate-controlled archives. But success brought visibility, and visibility brought scrutiny. An investigative journalist named Marcus Riley, no relation to Marcus Webb, published an article questioning the Foundation's financial practices. He implied that Elena had been less transparent than she claimed, that perhaps not all the vault's contents had been disclosed. The accusations were baseless, thoroughly debunked by the FBI and independent auditors, but they spread anyway. Social media erupted with conspiracy theories. People who'd praised Elena months earlier now questioned everything. The term, "too good to be true," appeared in comment sections thousands of times. Elena sat in her office reading the latest article, feeling sick. Tommy found her there, shoulders hunched over her desk. "Mom, you okay?" "I just don't understand," she said quietly. "Everything we did, everything we disclosed, it's all documented. How can people still think we're hiding something?" Tommy pulled up a chair. "Because it makes for a better story. Noble single mom is boring after a while, but noble single mom who's secretly corrupt. That's juicy. That gets clicks. So, what do I do? What you always do. Tell the truth. And keep working." He squeezed her shoulder. "The people who matter know who you are. The rest, they're just noise." Elena held a press conference, opening every financial record, every transaction, every decision made over the past decade. She invited skeptics to audit the Foundation themselves. Some accepted, examined everything, and published retractions of their earlier suspicions. Others simply moved on to new targets, new scandals. The experience taught Elena something valuable about fame and public perception. No matter what you did, some people would refuse to believe in genuine goodness. They'd been burned too many times, seen too many heroes revealed as frauds. Their cynicism was armor against disappointment. She couldn't force them to believe her. She could only continue doing the work, being the person she'd become, and trust that actions spoke louder than accusations. 6 months after the controversy faded, Elena received an invitation that represented everything she'd built. The Smithsonian Institution wanted to create a traveling exhibition about Oceanview, the vault discovery, the archaeology, and the community transformation. They wanted to show the full story, from desperate $900 purchase to International Research Center. But they didn't just want artifacts and photographs. They wanted Elena to help design the exhibition, to ensure it told the truth about hard choices, fear, doubt, and the messy reality of trying to do right in complicated circumstances. "We don't want to make you a saint," the curator, Dr. Lisa Chen, explained. "Saints are boring, and they make ordinary people feel like they can't measure up. We want to show that you were just a person who kept choosing the next right thing, even when it was scary and unclear." The exhibition opened in Washington, D.C. 2 years later. Elena walked through it the night before the public opening, seeing her story reflected back in artifacts, documents, video interviews, and interactive displays. There was the original auction flyer, her $900 check, photographs of the vault discovery, and then the transformation, rescued sea turtles, the Esperanza collection's return to Guatemala, the San Miguel and Santa Mariana discoveries, faces of people helped by the foundation. But the section that made her cry was titled The Ripple Effect. It showed Caroline Webb's journey from pariah to advocate, Patricia Morgan's son Daniel, and his therapy program, which now operated in 12 cities. The 17 small businesses started with foundation loans that had themselves created douche jobs. The marine archaeology students who'd trained at Oceanview and gone on to important discoveries of their own. Each story branched into more stories, lives touching lives, treasure multiplying in ways that couldn't be counted or quantified, but were undeniably real. Vincent arrived for the opening gala, dressed in a suit Elena had never seen him wear. "You clean up nice," she teased. "I figured after guarding that vault for 6 years, I could wear something fancy to celebrate what it became." He looked around the exhibition hall. Marcus would have hated this. He wanted that gold to buy power, respect, fear. Instead, it bought something he never understood the value of. What's that? Connection, community, legacy that lasts. Vincent smiled. "We won, Elena. Not against him. He was already defeated by his own choices. But we won against the idea that treasure corrupts. We proved it transforms, if you let it." The exhibition traveled to 15 cities over 3 years. Everywhere it went, Elena received letters from people inspired to make their own brave choices. A teacher in Detroit used her life savings to buy an abandoned library, turning it into a community learning center. A veteran in Portland purchased a foreclosed community center, creating a support hub for other veterans. They weren't finding hidden gold. They were finding the courage to take risks, to see potential in ruins, to believe that one person's commitment could create ripples of change. That was the real treasure, the one that couldn't be locked in vaults or stolen or lost. On the 15th anniversary of buying the aquarium, Elena stood once again in the ocean hall. It had been renovated, expanded, transformed so many times that little remained of the original structure. But the bones were still there, the foundation she'd bought for $900. The celebration was smaller this time, more intimate. Close friends, staff, foundation board members, and the families who'd been part of the journey from the beginning. Tommy, now Dr. Thomas Martinez, with a doctorate in marine biology, gave a presentation on rehabilitation techniques they'd pioneered that were being adopted worldwide. Caroline spoke about the justice work the foundation was funding, helping people expunge old criminal records, giving second chances to those who'd made mistakes and deserved opportunities to rebuild. "My father created a legacy of crime and pain," she said. "But this place, this community, we're proving that legacy doesn't have to be destiny. We can choose what we become." As the evening wound down, Elena found herself alone in the maritime archaeology lab, looking at a new artifact that had just been recovered from the Santa Mariana site. It was a child's toy, a small wooden horse carved with surprising detail. Some colonist had made it for their child, put it carefully in their luggage, and then been lost at sea before ever seeing their daughter or son's face light up at the gift. The tragedy of it, the love compressed into one small object, made Elena's throat tight. That colonist had been trying to do exactly what she'd been trying to do: provide for their family, create a better future, take a risk on unknown shores. The only difference was luck, timing, and a storm 336 years ago. "Mum?" Tommy appeared in the doorway. "People are starting to head out. You coming?" Elena carefully set down the wooden horse. "Yeah, just taking a moment." He came to stand beside her, looking at the toy. "You think about them sometimes? The people on those ships?" "All the time. They were just trying to build something better, just like us. You did it, though. You built something that lasted." Elena thought about that. "No, baby. We built something that's still being built. That's the difference." The colonists thought they'd arrive and be done. But real treasure, real transformation, it's never finished. It just keeps growing, changing, becoming something new. They walked out together, leaving the wooden horse under its protective glass, a reminder that every treasure has a story. Every fortune carries the weight of those who sought it. And every discovery is really just the beginning of understanding why we search for treasure at all. Outside, the Gulf breeze carried the salt smell Elena had first noticed 15 years ago, when she'd stood in ruins and somehow seen possibility. She still couldn't fully explain what had made her bid that day, what instinct or desperation or hope had raised her hand. But she knew now that the auction hadn't been about buying a building. It had been about buying into herself, into the belief that she could handle whatever that locked door revealed, that she was worthy of the transformation that would follow. The treasure had found her ready, even though she hadn't known she was ready. And in being ready, she'd proven that fortune favors not just the brave, but the honest, the generous, and those willing to believe that the impossible might just be waiting behind the next locked door, in the next ruined building, in the next desperate $900 gamble on hope. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you love this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.